So Femina was publishing poems. So there was a lot of opportunity to try and send your poems. I'm not saying that my first poems got published immediately. There were a lot of rejections. But my first poem, which I felt very intensely about, was at the age of 22. And that was written 46 years ago. And somehow I found it in my collection, which is a part of this. It's called I Forget, I Forgive. Now, it was when I was doing my master's, it was Mark Twain who once said, by the time a man is 21, he's fallen in and out of love 100 times. So, for one of my classmates, I had but she was already, sort of going steady with someone else who was like TDH, tall, dark, and handsome, and I knew I had no chance. But she was a good friend of mine. She would share things with her. She was not sure whether she would continue the relationship. Now, the guy was actually a Casanova kind of a person, and I kept warning her that stay away from him, and it was like a Hindi movie love triangle actually. But finally, she said that I'm not going steady with him, and last night I went with him there, I went in there. So I was very upset. For a week I didn't go to my class, and in that week I think I wrote this poem, I Forget, I Forgive. And I'm telling in the poem that this guy is going to reject you, but doesn't matter. When he rejects you, I'm still there. So you are just another insect being led by his crafty charm into his intricate web of affluence, of deceit, of lust. Don't tell me I didn't warn you. With the soul in bloom and with the badge of infamy, when repulsed, ask not for cyanide, my love. Just ask for my shoulder to weep on my love. So, it was around this time that then when this poem got published in the Youth Times, selected by Shiv K. Kumar. So my professor, I was in Raipur, I used to go to coffee house every day. Some of my professors, young professors, Bengalis would come, and Majumdar said, Jaz, I saw your poem here in the Youth Times today, damn good. So I said, where? So he said, I asked the news vendor there, when will this edition come of Youth Times? Bola tomorrow. But Majumdar said, I had seen it in Bhilai. Now Bhilai is 22 kilometers away from Raipur. So I was so excited that I took my scooter and drove down all the way to Bhilai in the night, 7:38. I went to the magazine shop on the railway station and picked up a couple of copies and came home. That was the excitement. I couldn't wait till next day. That is the thrill of seeing your work, especially a poem in a magazine. Sorry, what was your second one?
I think I'm audible. The pattern which emerges the life journey of the persona.
Yeah.
So you begin with my.
So okay. Now thanks for joining me. Yeah, my epitaph, ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you, is not a death poem. My epitaph here is that at the end of life I'm feeling I have not achieved much. Ladies and gentlemen, all of you are actually writing your own epitaphs of what you've achieved, what you've done. That is your epitaph. It's not a death poem. But I'm using the symbol of a tombstone, I'm using a symbol of what is written on an epitaph. There are death poems in my volume, quite a few of them, and some disturbing, but my epitaph is not a death poem. And in this also, you will see the refrain. Refrain is usage of lines. In contemporary poetry, one of the literary devices used very often is the refrain, using it again. In I Forget, I Forgive, I repeat in the end, my love, my love. Here it is on a cold, hard stone. Because the tombstone is cold and hard, it symbolizes that life is going to be tough. Life is going to be hard. So you're preparing for that, and sometimes in the end you wonder, what did I do? I always get that feeling, have I done enough? What have I done? So on a cold, hard stone have I engraved my own epitaph. Here lies a bum who thought he would do something in life. All he did was to write his own epitaph. Then there's a pause again on a cold hard stone. The repetition of that. If I remove the last line on a cold hard stone, the poem has no meaning. Which is what I'm trying to say is that in contemporary poetry writing, such literary devices, we might not be writing in iambic pentameter. We might not be rhyming our poems. But there has to be a basic rhythm, there has to be some literary devices like the paradox, the symbolism, the imagery, all this has to be there. So I would not say that my epitaph is it's in the beginning, yes it's there, but it's not a death poem. Death poems comes in the end, but yeah.
It's the pattern that emerges
Yeah.
between these two ends. So already, I think you, in the beginning, you did talk about the publishers, but what I wish to tell to the audience what I felt about this publishers, the feel of this book is so good. After a lot of, the technology and all, you get to get a real feel of the book in your hand. And it reminds me of some religious books, which, preempts the serious topic which is going to come. And I think I saw at my grandparents' place those religious books which are bound in cloth, but though they were not that brightly colored. And also the use of the calligraphy pen, all of it makes it so special. But you did answer in the beginning about if you would like to say something more about the publishers.
Yeah, a publisher I just mentioned, I think that Writers Workshop, Professor Lal, and I was very happy when just a few days ago when I sent them my newspaper cuttings, he sent me 2-line Professor Ananda Lal. He's written in 2 lines that is because of poets like you that we publishing houses can publish them, which is a big thing, I think. So they are very keen that I should send my second collection of poems to them. And it's a far greater honor to get your poems published by Writers Workshop rather than maybe Rupa paperbacks or something.
In some of your poems, I found that the persona is all powerful, in control, ready to curate his own pain and suffering, and doesn't even want God to interfere in that life. But in other poems, you seem to submit before life's sufferings, in almost like a victim, as you write in the dark book, that you feel trapped and immobilized by pure, unalloyed pain. So this oscillation between these two kinds of pulls, opposing pulls, it does find expression in one of the poems, Untitled, to which I thought Tiger Man would be the perfect title, because there you say that half of you is strong like the tiger, but the other half is like the suffering human being. So this oscillation between and this dichotomy, which I think most of us do face in life, at times we do feel we have the energy and the power to do everything. So, what do you have to say about this dichotomy? And also, in spiritual terms, can we see this as God's way to subdue the pride and arrogance in human beings? Maybe.
Yeah. So you touched upon 3-4 points. One is about this, curating my own pain. Someone in my last session asked a very nice question where you say that I will know that I will one day, God is. There is this line where I found in King Lear, when he says that God is swatting us like flies. We are like flies in his hand. Isko maar do, isko utha do, isko bimar kar do, isko cancer. What is this? And we are saying we are like in the hands of God. So it is a kind of thing that I know I'm going to, it is also a Christian thing of that it was not only Jesus Christ who bore the cross. Each one of us have to bear our own cross. Each one of us have to bear that kind of suffering which will come in our lives. But I'm telling God that I will not allow you to sort us like flies whenever you want. We would like to curate our own pain, and we would decide when we would like to get crucified. But at the same time, this poem is, someone very smartly asked me in my last session, which is also true, that how can you decide your own pain and your own suffering? So my answer to them was that this poem actually reflects we may not be able to decide when I am going to suffer, when I am going to be crucified. But my reaction to suffering, my reaction to pain, my reaction to grief, that is in my hands. How am I going to react? So you find different people reacting differently to different, stressful situations. Similarly, trapped, there's a poem which you rightly mentioned that sometimes you feel that I'm like a dartboard. People are throwing darts at me and I'm mobilized, I can't do anything. So that's the situation which has been stressed in that. And you mentioned tiger. Tiger, there is a juxtaposition between a human being. Last time, Suhash Ahuja, the well-known actor and a poet himself, who had come to discuss with me, had also said that you are underplaying the human being. You're talking about moth-eaten spirits in that poem. The tiger is splendorous. There's the best part about poetry as a genre is that we can take license. A novelist cannot take license, a playwright cannot take a license. Similarly, essay writer, prose writer cannot take license. But a poet can. I can imagine myself, in this poem I'm imagining myself as a half tiger and a half human being. Where the human is like, beaten up with moth-eaten spirit and the tiger is splendorous. So some of my wildlife lovers in Ranthambore like this poem.
Your poems elicit these kind of questions that life poses to each one of us, a lot of paradoxes, dualities, and ironies which confuses one about the real meaning of life. So I found that in your poetry you use a lot of paradoxes. For instance, in Topsy-Turvy, turning oneself upside down brings clarity about your own life. You write somewhere in that. And again, in how to withstand pain, you prescribe that one needs to just meet pain head on and immerse oneself in the crucible of suffering and breathe in agony in order to purge oneself of that pain. So this is the kind of paradox you keep talking about. So how do you feel that poetry brings in this feeling of catharsis and emotional purgation for a poet and as a person?
I'm glad you talked about the paradoxes or the contradictions in my poems. Last time it was pointed out by someone that